podcast. I am your host, Coach Jake, and I am here again. What's up, S Sensei? Where are you at, man? Where's everybody at? I want to know. I'm in Denver. Technically, I'm in Arvada. Arvada, it's like a suburb of Denver. So I don't know if you've ever been there. Have you ever been to Arvada, Colorado? It's right between Denver and Boulder. What's up, Ant Shark? Happy to see you, man. Alex, happy to see you. Texas. We're out in Texas. It's a big state, man. There's a lot of cities out there. Today, I want to talk about rules. I find the subject very fascinating. What inspired this is there is a show on HBO Max, a documentary called The Anarchists. Have you seen this? The Anarchists? I don't know if you've seen this. Fascinating show. To me, excuse me, the reason why I enjoyed it is it is a documentary, maybe 7 episodes or something. Totally, I binged the whole thing this weekend. The Anarchists on HBO, and the whole premise of it is they follow around these people known as anarcho-capitalists. Have you ever heard of anarcho-capitalism? So the one of the wealthier anarcho-capitalists, his name is Jeff Berwick. He made a bunch of money in the dot-com boom, and he started hosting this thing called Anarchapulco, right? Which was like an anarchist conference in Acapulco. Did you see that? Have you seen this? It's on HBO Max. A really cool documentary. You might have heard about it in the news. There was, all these people who had started, these people who call themselves anarchists, but they're technically not like the anarchists you see, which very well could be agent provocateurs of the state, dressed up like anarchists causing trouble. We know that happens. But these are like kind of your dreadlock hippie types that live on the fringe of society. They don't want to get a social security card, but they're anarcho-capitalists, so they believe in trade. They've also been called voluntarists, specifically a guy named Samuel Konkin the third. Sorry, I got something cut my teeth. He founded something called agorism, which is basically like living your life without the state. And the way they define the state is basically somebody who taxes you and then uses that against your will, and then uses that money for stuff that you don't want. So they're basically using the fruits of your labor to pay for maybe bombing people overseas or social programs here, or who knows, right? Whatever. Anyway, so there's this big conference and they all go down there, and I think this is a great, great documentary because it really is a lesson in anarchy, right? So we talk about this idea of trading freedom for security. Like, do you want security or do you want freedom? And I think a lot of people talk a big game about this, but when it really comes down to it, what ends up happening is that one of these young anarchists, they're like in their early 20s, they go down there and they start selling drugs in Mexico. And they piss off the narcos, right? Like the people actually running real drugs like coke and shit. And they kill some people. They kill one of these young anarchists who's selling drugs up in the hills of Acapulco. So, and then it's just all the craziness around that and the drama and the personalities. Now, I got sucked in and only heard about it because I know a few of the people tangentially in it because of my foray into the world of libertarianism. I've been a libertarian for a very long time. Now, there's all kinds of different libertarians, right? There's like the kinds that follow somebody like Milton Friedman, and those might be the more libertarians you find in government. They work in, like Milton Friedman worked for the government and whatnot. There's also like the ANCAPs, the anarcho-capitalists that fall more under Murray Rothbard, maybe but look, like Ron Paul worked for the government as well, right? So he's kind of like a supporter of anarchism, but not he's philosophically one, but indeed he actually went and infiltrated what he considered the enemy and worked there and tried to stop a lot of the legislation and whatnot. He got to be known as Dr. No. Anyway, this is all tedious. And this also has something to do with wrestling too. Trust me, this is all integrated. So one of the things I want you to understand is like, what are the are the anarchists right about rules? Are rules per se bad? What do you think? I mean, should people have rules? Can people, let's put it this way. Can people live without other people's rules, like peacefully? Right? And so this was really the experiment of Anarchapulco. And you come to find that, violence, which is really kind of gets put it into like a monopoly position with the state, right? That is like kind of what happens. So, we say, well, in exchange for providing police and fire and maybe roads and some other services, we as human beings, as individuals, will give you agents, you people, you other humans, this job under the name of a government or state, and you guys have exclusive use to violence, like shooting people and imprisoning people and whatnot. But there's a process, like due process and jury duty and all these other things, right? The Miranda rights and all these things that have been established to try to protect that. And there's some people who abuse it and it doesn't work out. In other situations, it ends up saving and protecting people. So anyway, it's a very, very complicated subject. I was very interested in oh man, we got a ton of people on Instagram. What's up, Rob Dent? What's up, Footsteps Dressed, Honor Battle, Invitational, Outlaw Scott Chase, Kenpo Warrior, Kaylin. What's up, people? So anyway, can we live in a world without rules? Or maybe put it better, can we rule ourselves? So I think that, there's a great, one of the most influential thinkers upon my thinking, especially since a young age, has been the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Okay. And he has this pithy saying. He's known for aphorisms or these pithy sayings. And it goes something like this, that those that cannot control themselves will be controlled by others. That this is basically like a law of human nature. Those that can't control themselves will be controlled by others. Right? So what is the purpose of rules? Because sometimes it is stupid. Guess what? Murder's been outlawed for as long as most people can ever remember, and murder still happens. Theft, prostitution, all these things that are illegal, do the laws really stop them? Well, maybe in an individual case. Maybe you have somebody who's a blatant criminal and they just keep robbing, or they keep killing, or they keep raping, or they keep pimping, or human trafficking, whatever the immoral thing is, and they don't stop. And then you do have a law against it and you imprison them. That one person can no longer do it. So in that regards, maybe, but when you look at statistics on laws and imprisonment and recidivism, and it doesn't necessarily stop recidivism either, which is meaning that the person's going to repeat the thing. So rules are very, very interesting, and they're different than laws, because rules, like I can look at a sporting thing, right? That's like, so with regards to a passion of mine, catch as catch can wrestling is a modality or a method or a way of wrestling, a mode of wrestling based upon a certain rule set. And that rule set, generally speaking, is that you can win with a pin or a submission. Okay. And because of that, it changes the complexity of the game versus maybe just submission only. A game that only is submission based. Okay. Or a game that bans leg locks. but other submissions. So you see that these rules can influence, they can nudge the style or the way that it looks, right? So I believe, that we do have to have rules. These could be personal rules of conduct, and they may be based upon personal experience, touching that hot stove, right? So my question is, what are the rules that you live by? And are there general rules, these universal rules of human interaction, like what Nietzsche was saying? Again, to repeat, this is from Nietzsche, those who cannot control themselves will be controlled by others. Fair? So in the case of this anarchist show on HBO, the documentary about the anarcho-capitalists in Acapulco, one of the guys was dealing drugs, okay, and in an established territory where these drug dealers already lived, and so he was not being controlled in his dealing of drugs, and so he was controlled, right? Like, I mean, it's complicated, and I'm not doing justice to it. I'm using it as an example. So don't get pedantic if you've seen the documentary. It's really fascinating, and it's tragic, but it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. Okay, so we got MTMG. I think society's been too brainwashed at this point. They look to others to guide them. They can make a million laws. People will make those choices regardless. Yeah, so So what makes sense given the world that we live in? I think a lot of people complain. We live in, now I'm speaking materially speaking, we live in probably a golden age, one of the heights of human existence. I mean, maybe there was in ancient societies somebody else who was as technologically advanced as us, but the records got blown up and we don't know. Okay. But outside of that, what we do know is the last 10,000 years of history. And this is probably the most prosperous it's ever been. I mean, really, like you can get off the 99-cent menu enough calories to sustain you versus just 200-300 years ago where people were struggling. Okay. You can get 2-day shipping or 1-day shipping or same-day shipping on tons of products. So materially speaking, we're living in a golden age, right? But, maybe not. MT also says of any rule or law, but I do think they help guide to extents. Yeah, so I think that the rules nudge things because then we see this also not just in politics, but in sport. People will cheat. They'll break the rules, especially if there's like the no cop, no stop. So, the question of anarchy, because I've thought about these things. I actually at one point ran for U.S. Congress against Jason Chaffetz, the rep out of 3rd Congressional District of Utah. I chaired an entire political party. So I did and I had a political talk radio show where I hosted lots of genius authors and thinkers and tried to get my bearing by talking to them about these things. And, one of the things the conclusion that I drew was that we already live in a state of anarchy. Okay. So here's the irony, right? So, anarchy is this idea of anarchy without a ruler. I don't know if, sometimes these terms are ill-defined. So I sometimes like the Socratic method in terms of breaking down a concept. So who then rules the rulers, right? If definition of somebody is there's a ruler and the ruled, so wouldn't it imply that there's basically the ruler is actually living under anarchy, meaning he doesn't have a ruler, right? Who rules the rulers? Is there anybody who rules the rulers? And if so, then who rules the ruler of the rulers, right? These infinite regress. But the reason I ask this question is that there is a level of anarchy, right? Is there a world government? Now, some people might debate like, oh, the UN or the New World Order or some shit, or Bilderbergers or Trilateral Commission. I'm not getting into conspiracy theories. What I'm saying is that, you know, there is anarchy at a certain level, meaning there's nobody ruling somebody at a certain level. And at what point does that come? And how does it happen? Right? So I think, you know, it's important. I think we get stuck in these old terms that sometimes are not suited or were maybe not accurate. And then we get stuck, we get trapped in like these linguistic traps of the past. So, you know, I tend to think in terms of compliance systems, right? And compliance can include pain or violence or threats or fear. Okay, so we're familiar with that kind of compliance. There's also the compliance that can happen through the control of information. So it's interesting, you know, all this vaccine stuff that happened over the last year. You know, they didn't make it mandatory in like a government putting a gun to your head kind of situation, right? But they made it mandatory for you to keep your job. And that was enough of a lever to get a lot of people to take this crazy, to become a canary down the coal mine in the largest medical experiment ever conducted, the medical trial ever conducted in human history. So they got the compliance, but they didn't have to put a gun to somebody's head. But they did it because they put somebody's business at their head. Because what happened is the government could threaten to revoke business licenses off of OSHA or, you know, whatever the safety regulations were. Now, they were quick to forget the lessons of the Nuremberg trials, the rules, the Nuremberg Code, right? Again, not a law. Well, I guess it is a law. It is the basis for medical ethics, and most laws are, you know, like, so Pfizer lost the largest criminal lawsuit in the history of lawsuits, and now all of a sudden people are trusting them to inject this shit in their body that's not been through proper testing. Now you can redefine what proper testing is, but proper testing based off of what most people, when there's not this craziness being pressured upon them, right? So I think it's important for us to be maybe skeptical of rules. I don't know that you can live without them, because I have like rules for myself based on my life, right? Like, I'm a cancer survivor when I was a kid. So I don't smoke cigarettes. That's a rule I have. I don't smoke weed. If I'm going to do anything like that, I might take an edible because I think that that's a safer alternative, right? I have certain supplements that I live by pretty religiously as a rule that I take that are great, like broccoli sprouts, right? Extract. I take that. It's fantastic anti-cancer properties. Let's see. Kalen says, in Spanish Civil War, tried it but didn't work. When people get scared, you end up with Franco. So fear is definitely a way of getting these compliance systems going, right? So I think, you know, it might be antiquated to think in terms of the state. I think, like, you know how like Friedrich Nietzsche said that God is dead, meaning conceptually the concept of God is dead. I think maybe that it might be fair to say that the state, the concept of the state, is dead. Instead, we need to look at the fact that these are just other human beings, right? I think what happens, like when I watched this, there was all this name calling going on in the anarchist TV show. Oh, you're a statist and blah, 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 or the government. And they create these abstract ideas instead of actually saying, like, this is a human being. And have you know, can we have a discussion about these rules and these compliance systems, and maybe there's some doubts, and maybe you can understand me, instead of just cashing a check and threatening me with a gun or fines or harassment, that kind of stuff. Let's see. Fulfill My Destiny Now says, I conduct my life according to U.S. Marine Corps 16 character traits. Okay, I like this. Marine Corps' 11 leadership principles and the U.S. Marine Corps' core value duty, honor and courage. I can only control myself. See, I love that. And I think that's really what it comes down to. But the problem is the people that don't believe that, right? Because maybe there's a caveat here. You can only control yourself, but maybe that also implies that you can't control others. I mean, you can, but maybe there's a bit of a moral component to it. I mean, I don't know. It's up to you to come up with your own decision here. I'm not being dictatorial about it. I'm just asking the question. So, do we need rules? I think that we do need rules. Do we need a crap ton of rules? I don't know that we do need a crap ton of rules. I think that creates problems in itself. I think it stifles creativity, right? Fulfill Destinies Now says, our society blames rather than taking personal responsibility. Now, I agree with you, dude. You're 100%. I'm square with you, because to me, the definition of freedom or liberty, or this idea of having more options, more choices, more ability to do more things, is synonymous with responsibility. Freedom and responsibility are actually the same thing. So in the case of Anarchapulco, I would recommend you guys watch this. It's a fascinating documentary. And you get to see the other, and this one's on HBO Max. The other one that I think is fascinating in this same regard is Wild Wild Country, about Osho, the spiritual guru who tried to set up his own community, which was somewhat, maybe you could call it anarchist, but really it was really controlled by by his assistant. I can't remember her name. But very interesting to see when you see like these conflicting values and rules, and how, the importance of conflict resolution and of third parties. Now, do those third parties necessarily have to be from a government or a threatening organization or a compliance-based organization? I don't know. Interesting concept, though, to think about, right? So, what are the rules that you have for yourself? So one of the rules for me personally, and this has been, honestly, this is crucial. This is something I've learned for myself. Experiment with it, see if this works for you or not. That I believe really helped me, honestly, was being a person that lives up to my agreements. If I say I'm going to do something, if I say I'm going to be somewhere, if I agree to something, I'm going to do my best. Hell or high water, it's very important for me to do that. Because I have done that, and I've done that for so long, I believe that is the very core root of my success as a business person. Not saying I don't have a lot of room for improvement. I do. I am not a billionaire yet. I would not mind being a billionaire. That is a goal of mine. So I haven't totally figured it out, but I do think a big component of that is your reputation. Okay. And that reputation is actually not with people that don't know you, because you can't control that. Anybody can be slandered, smeared, libeled. That happens all the time. That's why those words exist, why there's laws on the books against them, because it can happen to anybody where you're lied about or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. That's not reputation. What reputation to me means, the people that you made agreements with, and they know that you lived up to your agreement. That is your reputation. That is valuable. To me, that's the most valuable thing, one of the most valuable things in business, because business is about agreement, not disagreement. It's built upon agreements and being agreeable. It's hard to run a business when you're not agreeable. Nobody likes that, right? If the customer is indeed always right, then that means you must agree with them. Okay. Now, the client isn't always right, of course. But my point is that business lives upon being agreeable, upon agreements, this kind of stuff. So Fulfill Destiny says, do people study freedom, liberty, socialism, capitalism, democracy? I don't know that they do. Maybe they do. But the problem is all of those are so, by definition, politicized. So it's hard. people want to ignore the idea of subjectivity, but subjectivity exists, and subjectivity is really at the root core of the scientific revolutions at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century, namely relativity and quantum physics, in particular the double slit experiment. Subjectivity matters. Your perspective is different than my perspective. I like chocolate. You like vanilla or strawberry or pralines and cream or whatever, right? Is it right or wrong? No, it's subjective. It's just something I like. The problem is when, say, something you like is murder or arson or rape or theft or things that we understand, generally speaking, we can agree upon as criminal enterprises. It's because there's actually a victim. Okay. Now in our culture, we probably there's this debate about, oh, you have this victim mentality. Okay, let's shut up about that for a second. There are people who are really victims of other people. Somebody who was innocent and was murdered by a cop, a military person, a drone operator, a serial killer, a drunk driver. If an innocent person is killed, they are really a fucking victim. That's like a real legit victim. Now, all the other shit going on in the world, because your mommy and daddy were mean, or, I'm not saying that doesn't suck and that you don't have cause to be upset and the emotions. What I'm saying is you're not a victim. Okay. I'm meaning, so where I'm going with this is it seems to me that with regards to crime and politics, that there should actually be a victim, right? So like victimless crimes, like drugs. Now, if somebody, like in the case of this kid who died up in the hills of Acapulco, it wasn't drugs, maybe it was, but it's only because the drugs are illegal and because that brings in people who are willing to take that risk, high risk behavior. The crime was murder. People do drugs voluntarily. People seek out prostitutes, and prostitutes, if they're not being pimped or human trafficked, are doing so voluntarily, right? Like high class call girls or whatever. So they're not victims. They're actually doing this. It's your judgment or maybe puritanical values or whatever that make them a victim. But in their mind, they're not a victim. So there shouldn't be a crime. It seems like it to me, right? So I do think rule sets are important, but they seem to be more of an expression of a personal philosophy, like a psychological confession, more than anything else. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it makes sense to me. Okay. So my question to you is, just like Fulfill Destiny now was saying, like, the only person you can control is yourself. And even that is difficult. I mean, fair. This is the funny thing, is people want to control other people. Okay. But if you want to control other people, didn't we fight to end slavery? So what is, this is the thing where it's like, I think that maybe a general rule is that, people should be free to do anything that is peaceful, meaning doesn't harm other people. Now, by harm, I mean it has to be materially, not destroying their property, not destroying their physical body, not imprisoning them, not threatening them or making them make agreements under duress, which is basically what was happening with the you being threatened by your job if you didn't get a jab of this experimental fucking thing that turns you into a GMO. I mean, it's really what happened. You are now a genetically modified organism, man. You're up there with like the GMO eggplants and bananas. So my point is, we should think about these rules because they do ripple out. It's like in chaos theory, the sensitive dependence upon initial conditions. Well, the initial conditions are set by rules. So, I think about the world in which we live, and we do live, honestly, this is like a golden age. Violent crime is at the lowest rates, despite which the propaganda. Now, the compliance systems, okay, I want to say this real quick. Compliance systems, which I differentiate from a state. I think there's compliance systems because this could be states, corporations, religions. It could be parents trying to get compliance, and they operate. So far, I can only think of 3 levers. There might be more, or you might be able to subdivide the 3 levers. But the 3 that are used to get compliance is violence or the threat of violence, right? A gun, jail, that kind of thing, or manipulation or withholding of information, control of information, asymmetrical information, which is what happens for voting. How else could you explain fucking Joe Biden? That guy's so stupid. He's so senile. I mean, it's like crazy. Manipulating through information and the control of resources. So we look at how inflation is going on, the supply chains problems going on to get compliance. Those 3 levers are used. Fulfill destiny, says principles, characters, values, ethics, transcends race, gender, economic, religion. Yeah, of course, these are principles. They don't, right? They should be broadly applied to every human being who, as being born, is given that consideration, mostly through the idea of empathy, right? This idea of a theory of mind that if I'm human and I have these feelings and these desires and these concerns, I can extrapolate that and say, you're a human and you must have hopefully similar things. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to have similar values, right? I mean, shoot, everybody's got different goals. But how do we best coexist? Right? So I don't want to go too political. It's just I saw that show and it made me start thinking about rules. And, to me now, because I'm so out of politics, thank God, it's so ugly and so negative. And you could see it in this documentary. Is why I just dropped it like a hot stone. I got at a certain level. I started getting death threats. I started having my car tampered with, all kinds of crazy shit. I was like, dude, this is gross. I want nothing to do with it. And I came to my own conclusion. And maybe I'm wrong, but this is my conclusion and the experiment I'm running. I don't think that the path to liberty or freedom is political. It's very, very interesting because, in this, I hate to keep going back to it, but it's such a great petri dish, this anarcho-polko. In the middle of so I think it started in 2016, 2017 or something like that was the first conference. And it was just a mess, right? The main guy, Jeff Berwick, was drunk the whole time. And it was just, there was no organization. It was just disaster. Just a bunch of people decided to show up and they kind of marketed and showed up. And then this one guy, Nathan Freeman, started really organizing it and built it up to this big conference. Then that murder happens, freaks everybody out, causes all this turmoil. And then it's like the aftermath, right? But what's interesting is in the middle of that, right before the death of this poor young man, the tragic death, the Bitcoin explosion happens. And all of a sudden, all these anarchists love Bitcoin, but it splits this community between the super wealthy and the ones that didn't have Bitcoin. Now, they all started out maybe lower economic status or middle economic, you know what I mean? But when the Bitcoin thing happened, some of them had a lot of it because they believe it's like a stateless currency versus the Federal Reserve System, okay, that relies on the Treasury Department it buys the debt to create money out of thin air. So Bitcoin is different than this, right? I don't want to go into all the cryptocurrency shit, but the point is that the wealth created a huge divide. And so there actually became what was anarcho-polko and anarcho-forko, which is a reference to the forking that happens in blockchain, particularly Ethereum. So they forked, and one became this hippie commune thing, anarcho-forko, and anarcho-polko was all these wealthy Bitcoin millionaires and billionaires partying with yachts and private planes and Wu-Tang Clan parties and shit like that. But I think there's something interesting because this was a conclusion I came to. I don't think that the solution is political, and I don't think the solution is just getting off the grid. I think there's a lot of anarchy or a lot of freedom still to be had. Part of the problem, honestly, is the phones, right? They've made them very seductive. We use them. They've studied all the psychological triggers that get us high off of our own chemicals, the endorphins and the oxytocin and all those things that are triggered by the bells and whistles in your phone. But it's a bug. It's a surveillance device. And it's clearly being used by Google and Amazon and all these to serve you ads to buy stuff. But we also know that governments have access to it as well. Okay. So, you have a choice to stop using this, but you don't. You're seduced by it. And I'm victim to it too. Although I've really tried to do my best to switch from being using it like a consumer and using it like a producer. Because this is the lesson, I think, that the path to true freedom, okay, you're always going to have despots, control freaks, murderers, thieves. I think they spontaneously occur within human populations. So I don't think that that's ever going to be gotten rid of or cured. I fucking hate how everything's medicalized now. They don't even use political metaphors. Everything's a medical fucking issue. But I don't think those things will be going away anytime soon. Okay. I think a lot of that is a function of material abundance. The reason why crime rates are so low is because it's so easy to get stuff and stuff is relatively cheap. Okay. Fulfill Destiny. Are you familiar with Conscious Capitalism by John Mackey? Yeah. So he's a longtime libertarian, great guy. Hippie capitalism is really kind of what his deal is. Successful businessman. He actually just came out. He's very worried. He thinks socialism is taking the planet over. And I think that it is as well. But I think that it's more of a mean reversion. I think this experiment that we've had with abundance as a result of markets and capitalism and free trade, I think is an aberration. I think it's mean reversion, meaning that it's an anomaly and the system's going to, you get a spike and then it goes back to baseline. And the baseline, sadly, in the last 10,000 years is a history of slaves and masters. And so I sadly, I don't want any part of it, but I don't know. It's kind of inevitable in a way. I'm actually an optimist, but I am also an optimist because I try to look at things as objectively as I can and then navigate. So I'm not necessarily optimistic for everyone because some people will have tragedy befall their lives. I've had plenty of tragedy. So it's something that happens. But I think when you start to deal with facts, okay, and I would define facts as those things that when you stop believing them continue to persist. That's actually a Philip K. Dick model. So whether you like it or not, they still exist. Though you have to start dealing with facts. And when you start dealing with facts, you start looking at how people have become free. And I think a large measure of it we could see happen in that little petri dish of Anarchapulco is wealth. Right? So now are there rules to wealth? Yes, there are rules to wealth. Produce more than you consume. That's kind of a general, simple idea. Produce or create or make value more than you consume that value. Jeff Bezos, okay, whether you like him or not, I'm not asking whether you like him. Let me ask you this. Has he created value through all of his ideas, networking, hiring certain people, firing certain people, the reason he's so damn rich is because it used to take 3 to 4 weeks to get your shit. Now you can get it the same day. I was sick and I was suggested to get on glutathione and NAD for Omicron a couple months ago by a nurse. I checked on Amazon. I got it the same day. I was better instantly. I didn't have to suffer any longer. That's value. Okay. You have to start producing value. Now, some things you'll think are valuable and the market will be like, nah. Or you'll be like, nah, and the market's all clamoring for it, right? Like, look at like some popular music bands that you're like, God, that is awful music. But clearly there's value there that just you don't understand. Somebody's taking advantage and cashing a check and becoming wealthy. And I would argue that wealth does correlate with freedom in the way that I define freedom as optionality, being able to have more options and choices. Right? But what is stopping us from that? So we're told what we can and what we can't do at an early age before we really can critically weigh, like, does that make sense though? Do I really need to sit down and shut up? Do I really need to do what I'm told from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day at school and study this shit? That is it really true that I won't have a calculator in my pocket, so I need to learn math? I mean, I got a master's degree in math. I don't, it's like crazy, right? All the math all the information I could ever want is on the internet. So I think what I'd like to say here is that I do think rules are important. I think it's also important to not have too many rules, because otherwise you could stifle creativity and movement. So let's make it, I'll give you an example. Let's look at folk style wrestling, which has a ton of rules. The time frames have shrunk down. Was it 2 minutes a match now or 3 minutes? I can't keep track anymore. They changed so much. The same with freestyle. The rules change. And as such, the things that you can do become less and less. Let's look at the rules between UFC and Pride. Do you think Wanderlei Silva would have been as successful in UFC as he was in Pride? Because he really was killer with those foot stomps and those head kicks, which are illegal in the UFC, but were, to a downed opponent, but were legal in Pride. So you see how like these things can play out. And sometimes they're not life and death. I mean, like looking at the rule sets between IBJJF and King of Catch Wrestling. We have a more open rule set. We allow more things to happen. We don't even have levels. It's like enter. Now, what ends up happening is because we don't want sandbagging. That's how I decided to get rid of sandbagging, was to not have any levels whatsoever where people could pad their records when they're actually really good and they go to the intermediates or the beginners to get medals. Now, that makes it harder. Some people are like, dude, I ain't going in there because it's going to be all advanced guys. And that's kind of what happens. We have a lot of high-end guys and some guys who are willing to take risks to get in there with these tough dudes. But it changes it. So, as King of Catch, we've been around for since 2007. So 15 years. We're not huge, right? But that's because the rule set is got a lot more options to it, a lot more risk in the game, a lot more ways to lose, right? Fulfill Destiny Now says, I hate the new judo rules. The new judo rules limit leg attacks. Well, see, that's, you look at freestyle now. Freestyle looks a lot like sumo wrestling. They don't do a lot of ground wrestling. I really enjoy the folk style more. But more than folk style, I enjoy the catch because they limit the submissions. So it's interesting to me. And watch pro wrestling, which isn't real competitive, but how many rules are broken? Like even the good guys are breaking rules, hitting people with belts or trash cans or whatever, right? So, I think it requires us to be careful, and maybe we should have some rules about rules. Maybe we should start thinking about meta rules about rules. Like in government, maybe a good rule is that every single rule that's passed has an expiration date, that there's a sunset provision. Do you know, I think there's like laws in the books in San Francisco that it's illegal for a Chinese person to own a laundromat within a mile of a white person or something. I mean, like, the fuck is that even doing? Like, every one of these rules that's created should have an expiration date. That'd be simple to put in. Maybe every rule should prioritize consent. This is something that, like, so the Nuremberg trials, it's called principalism, is the ethical philosophy that came out of it, bioethical principalism. But the Nuremberg Code had very interesting code of conduct, and I think it's a great, not just for medical ethics, I think it's great for all politics. First, do no harm. Oh shit. Can you imagine that as a general rule? Do no harm? Now, we need to define it, because harm could be, oh, you hurt my feelings. Well, come on, man. Right? We're kind of heading into that world now where everything's so comfortable. Now, just the slightest thing is like flared up, when it's like, dude, that's not a big deal. You might need to be a little tougher and let things roll off your back. Anyway, I hope this makes sense. And I hope maybe this just got you thinking about, I don't necessarily per se have any of the answers. I've thought things out and come up with my own answers, and I think I can defend them or argue them well. Am I right? I don't know. I don't know. I do think, though, that wealth is the way to having freedom. And again, freedom is defined as the maximum number of options or choices in life. So what are the rules of freedom and the rules of wealth? I would say that one is to become valuable. What does it mean to be valuable? It implies under other people, right? Because a billionaire on a deserted island, that money don't do nothing if there's no other people. What good is $1 billion if you don't have other people to spend it, to buy stuff from? Right? So become valuable. And I think people put the cart before the horse. They want the money before they're valuable. You're not going to make money until you're valuable. Right? So, for example, I created the Scientific Wrestler Affiliate Fight Gym program. 4 people have already jumped on. I've got like 6 in the wings that I'm working on. This is going to blow up, and I haven't even done, I'm going to start my big marketing campaign in about 3 weeks, maybe a month, but about 3 weeks or 4 weeks. This is a hot product, but why? Because of, now, there's a great author, entrepreneur, you might have heard of him. His name's Russell Brunson. He's a wrestler. He's wrestled with my buddy Brandon Ruiz at BYU. He's a very successful entrepreneur. And he talks about when you make an offer or you're trying to sell something, create an incredible value stack, an irresistible offer. Right? So value is value to other people. So I was like, how can I do this? Now, what do I try? I mean, I'm transparent. I tell everybody it's $10,000 to be an affiliate with Scientific Wrestling. A lot of people are like, oh, $10,000. Oh my God. Okay. I mean, meanwhile, they'll go buy a $40,000 car or a $7 fucking Starbucks that has like, but the value is perceived to them, right? Part of it's because it's addictive. Now, how did I overcome that to where now people are buying this package, which seems like it's a high ticket until you hear the value exchange? You get tuition and paid for 2 to our highly acclaimed Coach and Catch certification, the only one co-developed and endorsed by Billy Robinson. 1 tuition is $5,000. You get 2. So there's $10,000 right out the gate. So right now you do that, and you do this with your partner at your gym or your husband or wife or your son or your brother or whatever, your buddy, you're already getting more value out of it. Then on top of that, I added a Mace Bell cert. And not just from anybody, because anybody can do it, but the guy who started the Mace revolution, started it, founded it, created the first fitness mace and all the protocols and named them. Okay. So now you got 3 ways to make money with this $10,000 investment. But then I was like, I need to make this irresistible. I mean, need to make it to where it's like, you would be stupid not to come up with a way to spend $10,000. Next thing I did is I offered the complete resale rights to everything I've ever produced through Scientific Wrestling. This is like 20 different instructional DVDs, websites, books from the very best on the planet. Okay. So now you can make money teaching grappling, teaching fitness, selling product. Then I was like, that is not enough. I added on business coaching from yours truly. And I not only have a master's in financial mathematics, started and scaled and sold several entrepreneurial companies. I scaled them up into millions of dollars. But in addition, I am one of 55 people, the very first class ever certified by Grant Cardone to teach his methods. Billionaire, #1 sales trainer on the planet. I add that in 6 months. Business coaching. I normally charge $25,000 for 6 months of business coaching, and I get it. So now you have two tuitions that are total $10,000. You have another certification that's $1,500. You have resale rights. That's almost infinite. That's on you, how much you could sell and hustle. Then you get business coaching that I normally charge $25,000 for. And then that wasn't enough. I was like, I need to dominate. There's no other affiliate program. Nobody doing what I'm doing. Now they might start copying me, but I'll always be #1. I'll always be the first one because this is what I do. I think things through, I execute, and I make it super valuable. Super valuable. Incredible value. Value means the best bang for the buck. Then I partnered with the #1 digital marketing agency in the MMA gym space. I can't say it, but they have these are big gyms. They I'll get to you, Matt, and I'll get to you, Fulfill Destiny. Let me just finish my thought here. They're getting over 1,000% return on these guys' advertising spend. Do you know what that means? That's 10x, right? So I talk 10x all the time. 10 times your money. That's like you put in 100 and you get out 1,000. That is like a no-brainer. I don't know what to tell you guys. So that to me is like how you create value. Now, it's taken me 20 years to put together all those resources for the resale rights. It's taken me 30 years of business experience to put the whole package together. It's taken me a lot of money to learn from Grant Cardone and to get my master's degree. So you see, like, I've made myself valuable, and now I'm making that valuable to other people, right? Okay, so we got a couple questions I want to get to. Fulfill Destiny. Can you understand and calculate derivatives? Yeah, I can integrate them too, or used to. I haven't had any need or cause to do so in 20 years, and now they got wonderful MATLAB programs that can do that for you. But yeah, I mean, I had to take calculus 1 and 2, and then I had to take stochastic calculus. So yeah, I can do all that, but I could also calculate derivatives in the financial sense, like options using Black-Scholes and whatnot. So I'm not sure the way you mean, but I got you covered, bro. Kalen, when you see various fighters using catch moves to win world titles and all championships, why has it still filtered through? Why hasn't it? Yeah, so that's what I'm working on, man. Now the thing is the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys were brilliant because they used the UFC. The UFC originally was a promotional vehicle, a marketing vehicle, developed by Jorge and Gracie and a few investors, and they really put on their particular brand of grappling on display and booked it to win. Notice Gary Albright wasn't booked, and there was a lot of people that were on that could have been on that show instead of like goofy taekwondo guys and stuff, right? Okay, so it was a brilliant move business-wise. And then they ended up moving in and kind of taking over the retail martial arts space from kind of the typical taekwondo McDojo. Now you have the BJJ McDojo in the strip malls around the United States, making a lot of money. Okay, great. I don't begrudge that. I don't, it's ethical. They're not, I mean, some of the ones in South Florida where they're fucking their students and stuff, that's not ethical. But what I mean is like, and insofar as it's just a business and people are making money in that, I have no problem with that. I just don't think the value is there personally. That's why I never bought into it and why I went on my own route, because I do believe in catch wrestling. But I'm grappling literate. I look outside of just catch. I've studied Sambo, folk style, Greco, judo, Aikido. I mean, I look at all these different styles so I can get a general idea, a lay of the land. And to me, in my opinion, Catch as Catch Can was by far the best combat sport for MMA outside of MMA itself, right? Maybe in conjunction with something like Muay Thai. I feel Muay Thai and boxing are still the best striking arts that you can add. And then Catch as Catch Can. And so, it's funny you say that, Kaylin, because I'm just one man and I learned my lesson late. That's why I'm doing Shoot Pro right now and why I need your help in helping me get good sponsors, because I think it's the platform. The UFC is what put BJJ on the map, regardless if BJJ is good or not. Okay. And I don't want to make that judgment. And there's great things. I don't mean to offend anybody. BJJ, I have a lot of respect for. Those guys are game, got some great technique, really tough guys. But I think, you can see as the game has evolved now, it's looking a lot more like catch wrestling, whether they want to admit it or not, or they say Ashi or not. Like, I don't give a fuck. I have my own set of eyes and I can look at fucking pictures from 100 years ago or 200 years ago. It's not complicated, right? These are facts. So I do find, though, that we get less pushback as catch wrestling, scientific wrestling. I was just this weekend with our first American affiliate, speaking about the scientificwrestler.com affiliate program. Our first American affiliate, we were there doing a training camp at his big gym down in Aurora, Colorado this weekend. Had a great time. You can go, I took some pictures and put them up. Well, other people took pictures, but I reposted them on Instagram. You can read them, got some great reviews. People really loved it. But I think, the sensibility of catch wrestling is like boxing. If you said I have a black belt in boxing, people would look at you sideways, right? Like, what are you talking about, man? Or a black belt in MMA. MMA, boxing, and catch wrestling are all prize fighting sports. This is the essence of catch wrestling. I've talked about this. I don't want to go into it because I've talked about it too much. But catch wrestling started when people started making bets on this rule set in the 1870s for grappling, okay? So it's a prize fighting mindset. It always has been. And that's why we're always more welcomed, because you could be a white belt. I don't really care. I'm going to show you a leg lock. You don't have to be brown belt or whatever. I'm going to show you everything I know to win. The only color belt that matters to us, like in boxing, is gold. Right? Fulfill destiny. I am a genius. I don't know, man. That, my kids certainly might argue that I'm not. But okay, if you go by IQ tests, I take them. I think standardized testing is fascinating, honestly. I take IQ tests routinely. My average is 125, but I have scored as high as 140. So 125 is considered the low end of genius, but I have scored as high. My high end is 140, which is like crazy. But sometimes tests just tell you how good you are at taking the test. They don't say much about how else you could do stuff. I will say this: I'm fucking creative as a motherfucker, and I work hard. And I think that's actually more important than IQ, whatever that means. So the No Way Jose, what's your opinion of 10th Planet? I actually like 10th Planet a lot. And I'll tell you why. I like 10th Planet a lot. One, because it's no gi. So that's one reason. Okay. Very similar to Catch in that regard. Two, they're already using all the Catch stuff, even though they might come up with some stoner inspired names. The truck is a side ride. It's been around forever. The twister is a wrestler's guillotine. Like these concepts that they're using, and so that's two. So one, it's no gi. Two, they're already using a lot of the similar concepts as us. Three, Eddie Bravo is cool. Like there's a real problem, and I don't want to just lay this at the hands of Brazilian martial artists. This happens in all martial arts where people want to like take credit for shit. Okay, and it's like, if you did do something cool, like I invented the fucking mace. Had I been hit by a bus the day before that came out, nobody would be swinging fitness maces in the way they are today, like on a widespread. I can take credit for that. That's not bragging. That's a fact. Okay. Now, if somebody else did it and then said, I'm the one who popularized it, created it, named all the moves and made it out of steel and created it for production, they'd be lying. Well, so it goes with things like the Kimura trap and all these other, like that bugs me. Eddie Bravo does not seem to do that in any way or shape or form. He seems like a straightforward dude. Like he's like, yeah, fuck, I just renamed it the dildo bong water or whatever. I don't know. He comes up with fucking all these weird names. And then, so I like 10th Planet. I think Eddie has an interesting thing going. Personally, I don't teach it and I have no interest in affiliating with them because I feel that catch wrestling has maybe I like catch wrestling better. I think it has more to offer. There's a deeper tradition. It's been around since the 1870s. There's so much data to mine and so much opportunity for individual expression of all those different moves and explorations that have already happened and could continue to going on. So I like 10th Planet. I think it's a great company. I think their affiliate program operates, from what I'm understanding, they hold all their stuff closer to the vest, but a lot of people, I have a lot of people that are defecting and leaving other, in particular, jiu-jitsu affiliations, not 10th Planet yet, but I had a couple people tell me like how their system supposedly works. Whether it's true or not, I can't verify, but ours is somewhat similar in terms of price and whatnot. So I hope that answers your question. I do think 10th Planet is great. I think it's valuable. Some of it I think is like, I don't know, man, like I'm not going to be wrapping my legs around somebody that way. Like I'm just not flexible enough. I don't really like being on the ground. I would prefer to spend a lot more time focusing on takedowns, controlling the transition from standing to being on top, period. And then how to escape and get back to neutral to standing. Anyway, that's all esoteric. I don't know if that helps. So let's get to Matt. Matt Granahan, I put you up because you're listening on YouTube. He said, I started going to Akari Judo in Danbury, Connecticut in 95 with some of my amateur wrestling buddies, and we wrestlers dominated judo back then. Dan Severn won a national judo championship. Yeah, it's the same thing with Wade. Wade did that with Sambo and with judo. Just entered in off of sheer skill. I do think wrestling is superior, but sometimes, a lot of it's technique based, but that technique is derived out of the amount of lab work done, right? I was talking to somebody about this week, and I said, think about you could have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. How many competitions or fights, sometimes those words are ill-defined, but we'll say just jiu-jitsu matches or fights. I know you MMA guys will get butthurt, but I'm not serious about it. I don't define it. I'm just saying how many matches or how many competitive events has a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy done in his whole life, right? What would you guess? 50? Maybe. That's not even one season for a 7th grader in amateur wrestling. Then he does that again. He might have 70 matches, competitive matches. Then 8th grade, then 9th grade, then 10th, then 11th, then 12th, then college. So it's had 4 more. Now this guy is 22 and has had 10 times the experience of competition than the jiu-jitsu champion guy, the black belt. Okay. So some of it is a function of effort. That's not to say that the whole 10-year jiu-jitsu thing is like not effort. It's just, sometimes it's like you got to really try to quantify things apple to apples there. What's Matt say here? He says, rules are usually designed to protect people in power. Well, that is true. Very interesting that Bill Gates was on Epstein's Island, and yet he's telling us what to do with injections instead of us talking about what he might have been injecting into underage innocent victims. Weird, right? But just to go to what Granahan's saying is that rules are designed to protect people in power. And this is what happens in government. This is also what happens in sports too, right? Like, so licensing laws a lot of times, right? Licensing laws are there to protect people who are already in the business by putting up a barrier to entry, so other people have to go through this licensing process or whatever to begin to compete with them in the business. And so this sometimes happens in combat sports as well, or any kind of sport. And sometimes the rules are there because somebody's gotten injured or harmed. So, rule creation isn't all bad, but we do have to be really careful about the number of rules added onto something, because it slows things down. It's bureaucratic, it's stifling of creativity, of innovation. So, how do you find that sweet spot? And I think it's by having a good set of a few rules and then letting the system evolve out of that. Well, I'm well over an hour at this point. Can't believe you guys all hung out with me. I appreciate you listening to me bullshit. I know it swings all over from business to politics to philosophy to humor to grappling and catch wrestling and jiu-jitsu and MMA and pro wrestling and everything else. So I just appreciate you guys. Phil Destiny says Russian judo has worked well against wrestlers. Okay. Kaylin says people forget most of the top coaches in Netherlands are wrestlers or judo. Bert Cobbs being one still training top level fighters. Okay. No way. Jose says thank you. I don't know if that answered your question. I think they're great, but I don't do it. I think they're better than everybody else that's not scientific wrestling. Okay. And they certainly have more affiliates, and they've been huge. I wish that I had a best friend with the No1 podcast that could bring me on and was a commentator on the biggest promotional vehicle to help push the sport, but I don't. But I do have some great guys, have like wonderful guys like Josh Barnett, who is a very good friend of mine, and puts over the efforts that I put on, and there's other people like that. So I certainly appreciate that. Matt Granahan being one. Hey, dude, I appreciate you, all the help. You guys understand my mission. My mission's to get every single man, woman, and child on Earth. I'm not going to do Mars right now. Elon can have Mars, but every man, woman, and child on Earth to improve their lives through the sport of catch wrestling as either a fan, athlete, coach, promoter, or combination of all of the above. I believe that that scientific wrestling in particular is the hands down best method of personal development in all humankind. Because, and let me explain that. Maybe I need to do a whole fucking show because I could go on, but I've got other things to do, and I'm sure you do too. But personal development, right? Trendy name, self-help, that's what I used to call it. That's what I like to call it. But personal development is the new rebrand. Consultants are now coaches. So staying with the new language, personal development, you learn the way I've learned and what I teach and what I promote through my guys who carry on the stuff that I'm carrying on as well from people who taught me, like Billy and Carl and Wade and other people. First of all, you're getting character development, physical development, spiritual development, all through the sport of catch as catch can, the highest in standards possible. Okay. You will get in the best shape of your life. You'll have the most confidence you ever have as an athlete and fighter, because it is the best. It's an amazing system. It is truly, truly the best. But beyond that, I want you guys to extrapolate this. I've heard CEOs say this time and time again, that wrestlers make for the best hires because they're tough, they're creative, they're persistent, they're not afraid of working their ass off. They try to think about winning constantly. And so I think that in terms of not just physical and spiritual development, giving yourself a challenge and hard things to overcome, those things that have been taken out of our soft technological advanced society, right? These initiatory rites of what it really means to be a man and to challenge yourself, or to be a woman and challenge yourself and suffer and lose and win and all that comes with that. I think that comes baked into catch as catch can wrestling. However, there's a strong business component too, because we've learned all this other stuff from MMA, Olympic style wrestling, folk style wrestling, professional wrestling, all of these different styles of how to make money as well, how to make a living, how to put food on the table for your family. Look at Vince McMahon. I'm not talking about all his shady shit because he's shady as shit. I'm saying, look at his success though. Okay. I'm not looking for some cookie cutter thing. I'm just saying, like, let's look at what he's done. He has taken theatrical wrestling and made billions and billions of dollars and put food on the table for people, put smiles on faces for decades and decades with wrestling. I believe scientific wrestling has the same option, but with competitive professional wrestling, not theatrical. Okay. Not the stuff that now Triple H and Stephanie are in charge of. And that's great. I love that shit, dude. I'm a fan, especially NXT, man. I love that old black and gold era of NXT. Amazing product. Okay. But it's not catch wrestling. It's not competitive. That's what we're doing and the opportunity that we have. And I'd love to have you on mission. So let's see. No1 Jose, do you believe catch by itself is a complete self-defense system? Okay, I don't think it. You know what's a complete self-defense system? A fucking concealed carry, a gun, and a pair of sneakers, and a fucking kick-ass attorney. I don't want to talk about self-defense. It's a waste of time. Okay? If somebody's gonna fuck with me, I've got a knife, I've got a gun, and I've got an attorney on speed dial. Okay? That's how you defend yourself. Like, it's the modern age, dude. If you're getting into, do you see that dude who got stabbed in the throat in the subway or whatever? Like, it's self-defense. I have a problem with that. I think you're going to get people killed trying to sell self-defense unless you're teaching people how to fucking use a knife or shoot somebody with a gun. Self-defense. I'm not talking offense or murder or crime. I'm talking defense. So now, would I rather know catch wrestling than taekwondo, Krav Maga, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing in a self-defense situation? Yes, I would. But I'd also rather have a gun or a knife or a group of people that have my back. Fulfill destiny now. Let me restate. Russian judo works against wrestlers in judo competition. Oh, well, that very well could be true. I have no idea. Combat athletes, and he says combat athletes in general make great salespeople, entrepreneurs, all that kind of stuff, because it takes this willingness to persist and this willingness to win. Right? Now, the trick is to do it ethically and not manipulative. That's why I like Grant Cardone, man. That guy fucking dominates, and he does it in a transparent, honest way. That's why I teach the way he teaches in sales. So I don't know. I got to get out of here, guys. I really appreciate the conversation. Show up tomorrow. I don't really have a set time. Maybe I should start doing that for sake of you guys that want to be regulars on the show or just keep the conversation going. But I don't, not yet. So tune in. It should pop up on your feeds. I know it does if you have YouTube. All the lives right now pop up if you do. Like Facebook, I think, does too. So you can see it. I hope you can tune in. If you don't, you can always go to like number1 ninja. number1.ninja. That'll take you to all the old shows, and they're all up on YouTube. They're also, I have them on Spotify as well, so you can listen to any of these old shows. I think I'm at I must be close to 50 by now, 50 different shows. So they're archived. You just won't get them live. To get on live, you just got to jump on when the live notification comes onto your phone or whatever. So I appreciate you guys. Fulfill Destiny Now says, thank you so much. Thank you, dude. I appreciate you. Great questions. Great commentary today. Also, thanks to Matt and who else was jumping in here? The No1 Jose, Kaylin. I appreciate all you guys jumping in and sharing your ideas and your thoughts. We'll be back tomorrow. Take care. Have a great night.